Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. And this week, we are continuing our NFL 2025 draft profile. And this week, we are talking wide receivers and defensive ends. And to join me, one of the most knowledgeable draft guys that I know, Mr. Matt Professor O Owen. Matt, thank you for joining tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be on. So I've done shows with you before. Usually we do UDFA series, so It's fun to actually do it pre-draft this time.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we've had conversations before. I've given up receivers. There are certain positions I usually can nail. Wide receiver is a position I'm done with now. So I leave it to your expertise to guide me on who are the good and the bad receivers in drafts going forward. So I really appreciate you joining tonight, talking wide receivers, and then giving us also your information on the defensive end position, because I know that is a position, kind of what you said before we started. Once you get past the top two or three, everything else is kind of a crapshoot and who you like and who you don't.
Yeah, and I think wide receivers a little bit like that, which is why they're two fun positions. So I played wide receiver. That was my position. So I feel like I know that position really well. And even knowing it, you just never know how these guys are going to pan out at the next level. So it's kind of fun to just envision what they might look like when they have a year or two of working with like a Delphonte Diamond. That's the wide receiver guru that CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of other receivers work with, or like a David Robinson. That's who Des used to work out with. Mm-hmm. So you just never know like who's going to develop and take their game to the next level. And make that like Justin Jefferson leap from really good in college to stud in the NFL, or who's going to plateau and never really hit their stride. So
it's fun. All right, I got a couple questions before we get into it, but before we get started, got to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I see we got quite a few people joining us from YouTube, so thank you guys for joining us. I see the views for X are starting to grow. So for all you guys watching on X, if you get a chance, make sure you join on Facebook after the show. Go to the DC4L Facebook group. A lot of great conversation, a lot of great information, a safe space for Cowboys fans to talk about all things Dallas. Also, go to YouTube, find DC4L, hit that subscribe button while you're at YouTube. Also, go find me at Bluff City Cowboys. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. We got a lot of content coming for you guys. So I see we got the regulars joining. We got our guest from last week, Dominique White, joining. I'm pretty sure there are a couple of players that he's interested in hearing Matt's thoughts on, so we'll definitely get to those. We got some show regulars. Jeff joining us as always. Appreciate you tuning in. Jeff will probably be joining me on the show before the draft at some point as well. We got our resident draft guru Mendoza joining us. I'm sure he'll throw out a couple obscure names from South directional state that none of us will know, but he'll be sure to give us all the information on that guy. Let's see. DJ Dog, haven't seen you in a while, so thank you for joining us again today. And also got Spoonie, so bringing the Pick Six Sports crew all together in the chat. Thank you for joining, Spoonie. All right, DJ Dog already starting, says I have Ted, Emeka, and Golden in that order. We're a little different from what Matt has, but we'll talk about that in a second. Once again, guys, this is an interactive show. We are fueled by Cowboys Nation. So get in the comments. Let us know what you thought. Any questions you have. We're going to be here an hour and a half. So we are definitely looking to hear what you guys got to say about what we're talking about. So before we get started, Matt, I do have a question. As a wide receiver, when you're looking at receivers, what exactly are you looking for in terms of what will transition from the college game to the NFL game?
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question.
But just give me one or two things that really, like when you watch a tape and this guy stands out, what is it about that guy that stands out?
Well, I think you have to start in the very beginning, the release package. Does this guy have a release package or not? And that also depends on where they're lining up. Like if they're a slot receiver, they're not going to face as much press. Or if they're outside, like an X, they're going to face a lot more press coverage. So do they have a release package? Second thing I like to see is, do they have a plan when they run the routes? We'll talk about that too as we get to defensive ends with pass rushing, but
Mm-hmm.
are they able to determine pre-snap what the coverage is and how they're going to take advantage of that? Like if the cornerback's in an inside leverage, how are they going to attack that if they have an inside breaking route? Because you can't just run into them or you're letting them cut you off. You have to have something to take them off of their spot, which is called restacking the defensive back. Do they have a way of doing that? And that kind of goes in with the release package, but it's also having a level of football IQ. We see a lot of fast guys that can run downfield in college, and it doesn't translate in the NFL because those guys are also fast and they're the best of the best in the world of what they do. So do they have a plan as a route runner, and do they have a great release package? If you have those two things, a lot of the other stuff can be taught or worked on. So those are probably the biggest two that I would say.
Okay. I guess that was kind of leading to my next question. Like, if a guy doesn't have a great release package, is that something that they should naturally have when they transition to the NFL, or is that something that they can acquire when they become a pro?
So you can definitely acquire it. I already mentioned Delphonte Diamond. I think he's one of the best in the game at teaching release packages. So you can but if you have that in your tool bag already, it's just such a significant advantage because it takes away that rookie learning curve, or at least mitigates what that would be like. So yes, you can definitely work on release packages and learn some of that, but if you already have it at the college level, and some of the receiver, like if you look at Ohio State, for instance, Brian Hartline, best wide receiver coach in college football.
Oh yeah.
He has his guys ready to go before they get to the NFL. That's why they translate so well. And we'll talk about one of those guys in our top 10. And then actually Junior Adams, Oregon wide receiver coach, now Cowboys wide receiver coach. I think he does a good job. So there's a few wide receiver coaches in college that do a good job of having their guys NFL ready. But again, you can work on it. It's just nice to have if you already have that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Junior Adams because he's highly regarded in the wide receiver community. And he was definitely a great addition to our staff that fans don't normally talk about. I see we got Nix joining us, so we pretty much got everybody joining tonight. Thank you for joining, Nix. Let's go ahead and go to your top 10. We'll start wide receiver first, and we'll just kind of go through, get your thoughts on all these guys, where you have them ranked, and why. And I do have a question related to this first one before we get into it. So, number one on the list, I think this is pretty much everybody's consistent number one, Ted McMillan. You talked about some of the things you look for from college to NFL. Now, a couple of weeks ago, there was this video that looks like it was shot hidden camera under somebody's shirt where Ted said, "I don't really watch game film." Does that bother you as a person looking at a college player that they don't watch film or they don't like watching film on their own?
So the fan in me, yes, it bothers me, but the football side of me says, no, it's not as big of a deal as we think it is. So quite a few players say that, like Julio Jones, future Hall of Fame wide receiver, said he does not watch games when he's not playing. We've heard Jake Ferguson, tight end for the Cowboys, recently said the same thing. Like these guys, they're so invested in football from like 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night or whatever time they get home. That's all that they do. They have their own film study where it's a super deep dive. So like, yeah, you would like them to watch film or want to watch football on their own, but burnout's a real thing in everything that we do in life, whether you work in photography or entertainment industry, or you work in construction. Like if that's all you ever do, at some point you're going to be like, I just need a mental break from this. So I understand it. And also he was 19 at the time. He's older now. He's probably changed. I'm sure now that he understands how to watch film. And think about if you played sports in high school. I don't know how much film you watched and at what level of understanding you had. You may not really understand the benefit of watching film or know how to watch film. So now that he's had a chance to actually be there and been in a college program where he's working with wide receiver coaches and having a better understanding of how you could use that to your advantage, maybe he has a different understanding of it now. But even if he didn't, a lot of NFL players, like Eric Dickerson said, he didn't watch football when he wasn't playing football.
Right.
We've heard quite a few players say that. Curtis Martin, same thing. So again, I would like him to be like a film junkie, but I think realistically these guys have lives and other interests outside of football. So it's kind of it's not the greatest thing to say, and it looks bad from an optic standpoint. It looks like it just happened at a diner 3 weeks ago. But again, he was 19 years old. He was relatively still young and immature. So it's kind of how it goes.
So I see people in the comments putting certain players at 12. What makes Tet the consensus number one to you? What makes him stand out over the rest?
Yeah, good question. So first question I would have is from a production standpoint, you have one player in college football that's had 1,300 or more yards receiving for the last 2 seasons, and that's T-Mac, Tedero McMillan. If you look at that offense, that is not an offense that's super conducive to like prolific wide receivers. Like that's not a team like what we saw with LSU where they were ramping out wide receivers left and right. It's not an Ohio State where you're playing with a high-end quarterback more often than not. So it's just being able to produce at that level with Noah Fafita at quarterback in a system that you should not be that productive in helps. But also, you don't find a lot of guys that come around. When we look at the list of guys that are 6'4" or taller that have hit in the NFL, there's not a large list of that. Part of that's because we don't get a lot of these guys that can move like he moves. So being 6'4" helps, right? But that's not the only differentiating factor because Jaden Higgins is a tall receiver too. But his ability to contort his body, his body control, his body control and ability to create separation. And and that's something I want to talk about too. When we talk about separation, people think of like yards of separation. Like, are you getting 2.5 yards of separation or 1.8 yards of separation? When you have the length that he has, the body control that he has, and the ability to stretch and react, you can create, instead of horizontal separation, you can create vertical separation. And that's something that we saw as Cowboys fans with like Dez Bryant. Like he didn't always have to be open to make a big play because Romo knew if I throw a back shoulder fade, it doesn't really have to be an on-target throw. He has the ability to go get the football. Or if I throw a slot fade to him, he has the ability to go make a play on the ball. T-Mac has a rare ability to do that, but he's not just a big receiver. Like if you watch him on film, he's actually getting yards after contact. He's actually making people miss. Like he's a much smoother athlete for a 6'4" profile than what we typically see.
All great points. So going to Jason Layton in the comments was one of my other questions. Now, we saw Travis Hunter at his pro day worked exclusively at wide receiver. Do you think there's a chance that he transitioned the NFL to a wide receiver more than corner? Because I know we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and you made a great point about him being wide receiver one as opposed to cornerback one.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite topics, just because you're getting like rarefied air when you talk about a player who can really play offense and defense, like the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL. Like we've seen guys in small doses like Champ Bailey, Deion Sanders, Terrence Newman. Like sometimes we see that, but we've never seen a guy that's doing 50 or 60 snaps of offense and 50 or 60 snaps of defense. So I really hope he's able to do that. I don't have him listed as a wide receiver just because the general consensus in the draft community is that he's a cornerback who's going to play receiver. If he was listed as both, I would have him at cornerback one and wide receiver one. I think he's just a special athlete.
Yeah.
His body control is just ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. He can make these contorting catches. He can make these diving catches. He's just a freak athlete. I would absolutely love to have Travis Hunter, and he would be wide receiver one pretty easily if we were ranking that wide receiver. But I have him listed at cornerback just for that reason. But really, he's a slash, and we don't have slash athletes very often like that.
Did Deion Branch play both ways, or was he exclusively at corner when he started playing defense? I don't remember.
He did, but it was when he shifted over, he was playing primarily defense at that time and then played a little bit of offense.
Okay.
So it wasn't a 80 or 90 snaps a game type of thing.
Yeah, I can remember. That's just the last person I can recall who played both sides of the ball at that position. I see you have a critiquer in here, AA Run from 561.
Yeah.
Not a fan of some of the guys you have chosen. So he says, ew, Burton at 2. Yeah. So let us know why you have Luther Burton at 2.
So Luther Burton is a guy that the draft community has been way too hard on. Like if you watch him in 2023 and you see what he's able to do with yards after the catch, he has that like Deebo Samuel type of quality or trait. I think a really good comp for him actually is early career Percy Harvin, when Percy Harvin was actually dynamic prior to getting all the concussions in his career going downhill. I know that's not a name people are going to be super excited about right now, but he's a ridiculous athlete. He's like a running back playing receiver, and you see that trait on film. But if you watch 2024, his quarterback Brady Cook just completely it was a disaster. He was a different player from year to year. And if you watch film, there's frequent times throughout the game where he's open deep, he runs a seam or a slot fade, and Brady Cook misses them by like 8 yards. Like he left hundreds of yards on the field in multiple touchdowns by just bad quarterback play. I think if you put him on the same offense as some of the other receivers we're going to talk about, I think he would thrive. I'm willing to bet on his ability. I know that there's some kind of talk out there that he might have some diva in him. That part really doesn't bother me as long as you're not doing stuff off the field or slamming your helmet or any of that stuff. Like I don't really care about that. So that's, if he's immature, so what? A lot of these guys are, and hopefully he'll grow. And if not, whatever. We still see like Tyreek Hill, who's in the news all the time, but still super productive. So I think he has a lot of ability and can thrive if he's in the right offense. I definitely think he's going to be a situational guy because of what his skill set is. Like I think he would have been a terrible fit under Mike McCarthy.
Oh yeah,
the way that we use receivers. Yeah. But I think if you put him on like the Rams, he would be an absolute monster in that offense. So in the right scheme, I think his upside is higher than a lot of the other guys. So that's why I have him at wide receiver too.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Percy Harvin because I was just talking to my former co-host Lambo, and that's the first name I brought up. Take away the running back stuff and just look at him as a receiver, and to me, I think that it was a perfect comp.
Yeah.
All right, so next we'll go to Matthew Golden. I know a lot of people like in the comments like Emeka. So why do you have Matthew Golden so high on your list?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what he did last year, like that was his big breakout year. Obviously, he's in Texas. He's in a location where he's going to have more eyes on him. So he had the opportunity to draw the attention that he didn't have in his previous college stop. But bright light games, he made a lot of big plays. Like if you watch him against Georgia both times, he had a ton of success against them. I mean, I will say I don't see the 4.29 speed on film. I was really surprised when he ran that. I thought he was more of like a 4.4-ish guy, which is plenty fast. So I was genuinely surprised that he ran that fast at the combine. But again, he's a guy, although he's smaller profile, I think he can line up inside and outside. I think he'd be totally fine lining up outside in the NFL. He also has good body control, and I think Quinn Ewers also cost him a lot of yardage. If you watch that, there was a lot of underthrows and kind of off-target throws that kind of left him hanging. But again, I think he has the ability that if he's in the right system, and that's something we'll continuously say through the draft cycle, I think his upside is really high. Like I think he's a relatively high ceiling guy. I don't know that we've seen the best of him yet, and I'm thinking last season, 2024, might have been a launching pad where maybe he had that reality like, hey, I'm better than I realized. Sometimes there's a light bulb moment that goes off. And last year may have been that for him. So I'm willing to bet on his upside. He's a guy that if he's there for the Cowboys, I wouldn't be upset at all if they drafted him.
A lot of great questions, a lot of great comments and over here, guys. Thank you for that. I'm pinning out as many of them as I can. We're definitely going to get to them. Let's get the likes matching the views. So if you guys are watching and you're watching from Facebook, be sure to hit that like button. Let's get those likes up. And for the people joining us on X, where it looks like most of the people are watching, if you want to leave a comment, be sure to click the link on my profile. Go over to YouTube because I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on some of the stuff we're talking about. I see we got Nick. Some of our group chat comments are starting to spill over in here. Situational prospect at number 2 on my board. Can't be. DJ Dog says Quinn was so inaccurate and that did hurt the offense. 100% agree. Somebody had a question about Jeff asked a question about Emeka at 5. You said interesting. Are you Jeff? Just get in the comments. Do you mean he's too low or too high? And while you put that comment, we're gonna go to number 4, which Ole Miss alum. So I'm always happy to see one of my Ole Miss guys get some love. Trey Harris, a name that fans are not talking about, who probably is the second best true X in this draft. Why do you have him so high? I could talk about him, but I want to hear your thoughts. Mine are going to be jaded in fandom.
No, that's totally fine. So Trey Harris is a guy that I'm a guy that I want to see your like signature game in college. Like where's like the best version of you that you could possibly be, so I can say like, is that replicable? Is that something they could do at the next level? I really dislike how Lane Kiffin used him at Ole Miss, and even despite that, he was ridiculously productive.
Yeah, that's true.
Like his quarterback rating when targeted was 149.5. Like that's crazy. His yak average was 7.7 yards. Like
he
if you
averaged 100
watch,
yards a game.
and when I talk about signature games, watch him against LSU. Like he looks like a legit top 10 pick in the draft type of guy. Like if you watch him and then you watch like Malik Neighbors last year, you'll be like, there's some of that there. Like he can make plays with the ball in his hand. I don't like how Lane Kiffin used him, and he still was super productive. He's one of the rare X's, and the reason I say rare X's is as colleges get more spread and more of the offensive styles that we're seeing, you're seeing tons of slot guys. Like it's not hard to find slot guys, and if you look at most people's top 20 this year at wide receiver, you're going to see a ton of those guys.
Yep.
Those true like X type body types are just hard to find. They just are. It's kind of like a how like fullbacks are like a dying breed. X's kind of feel like a dying breed right now. So I look at Trey Harris, and I think there's a guy that was really productive in a system that I think he was showcased in, but I think he could have been showcased in a better lighting. He was a deep threat guy, but also has the ability to make plays with the ball in his hand. I think his ability to play outside and his size speed profile. He's a 4.5 guy.
Yeah,
not lightning fast, but that's plenty fast for his play style. And
yeah, for a guy that's 220, that's definitely a good speed.
Yeah, he's like 6'2", 220-ish, 4'5", 40. And again, he has the ability to make plays with the ball in his hands, and he torched some of the best defenses in the country. So I think a lot of what he does translates, and I don't think he's going to be a situational guy, since Nick mentioned that with Burden. I think he's a guy that you could plug and play in most offenses, and he could be successful.
Okay, so let's move on to Emeka, and then we'll start to get to the second half of the list where a lot of the comments are getting a little bit more contentious. So we got Jeff going that Emeka is a slot, can't match him with CD, and then Aaron saying that he's a Z2. What do you think he profiles as best in the NFL?
I mean, I think he could do more than slot, but he's a slot guy. Like that's what he was in college. 81% of his snaps were at slot. That's kind of what he did. If you look at his average depth of target, it was 7.9 yards. So they weren't throwing the ball downfield to him a lot. And if you look at how many of his passes were under 9 yards, it was like 62% of his targets were 9 yards or less. So that's he's a short yardage, quick guy. What is easy to like about Emeka is he played again for Ohio State, Coach Brian Hartline. He's NFL ready right now. Like he's a high floor guy. He's tough. He runs good routes. He's going to be competitive for the ball. Like he does a lot of stuff right. What I don't love about Emeka is I don't think his ceiling is particularly high. I think he's going to be a 750 to 850 yard, 6 touchdown a year type of guy, which is good. It's a nice thing to have on your team. But I think in the majority of draft classes, he's a second round pick. And that's why I have him graded as a second round player. Again, he's a nice guy, nice player. He's going to be competitive. He'll come in and help teams out. I just don't think he's a difference maker at the next level enough to have him higher on my board than what he is. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, and that's totally fine. But where my pushback would be, look at the receivers he's played with in college. He played with Marvin Harrison Jr. He played with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
That's 6 receivers, including him. And he's very clearly wide receiver 5 at best, but most people are probably going to have him at wide receiver 6 on that list.
Yeah.
So if he's a clear tier below those guys, and those guys are guys I think you feel fine pulling the trigger at 12 on. I don't feel great pulling the trigger at 12 on Emeka. I think if he was there at like the late 20s or something like that, or the early 30s, I'd have no problem with it. He's not Cole Beasley. I'm not trying to make him sound good. But again, like I think he's a guy, if you take in the late half of the first round, which are your second round and graded players, or actually in round 2, you're happy with him. I think if you take him at 15 or higher, you're going to look back and say it probably wasn't the best pick.
I agree. Definitely agree with that. So you just mentioned if he was in the second round, you'd be happy. What do you think the first round stops at on this list?
So good question. So I have 15 first round grades.
I mean, just at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I have 15 first round grades total.
Okay.
And Matthew Golden is my 15th grade. So the third guy on this board is where my wide receiver 1
gotcha.
first round grades cut off at.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the second half, going 6 through 10. So I don't really know a lot about Jalen Royals. I haven't really been diving into the draft like I normally do, and like I said, I pretty much leave wide receivers alone now. So let me know a little bit about him. I know he's a small school kid. Why do you have him so high on your list over some of these other names?
All right. I absolutely love Jalen Royals. I love him. So he's a Utah State wide receiver. A lot of you guys probably haven't had a chance to watch him play very much. A good game to watch him would be Boise State. He absolutely torched them. So he ran in the combine even after being so first. Let me backtrack. So he had almost 800 yards receiving in like 7 games last year, like 839 yards, 6 touchdowns in 7 games. Like he was extremely productive. Um, he's supposed to be a 4.3-ish type of guy. Like he can fly. He has good body size too. He's 6 foot 205. So, he can play inside and outside. In college, he mostly played on the outside. He did play some in the slot too. What was weird about Utah State's system is if you watch film, he literally only plays on the left side of the field. They never have him on the right side, which is weird because a lot of times colleges are kind of, any system actually in the NFL, receivers are kind of moving all over the place. He was a left side receiver for some reason, but he can make plays with the ball in his hand. He's very fast. He ran a 4.42 at the combine, and that's at 80% health is where he said he's at, coming back from his knee injury last season. He's a 4.3 guy, and you can see it on film. Like when he has the ball in his hands, he's extremely explosive. If you want a name to kind of put into perspective what he's like, if you liked Malachi Corley last year, he's a much better version of that player.
Okay.
So he's a guy that, again, you can throw screens to him. You can let him break tackles. Like he makes a ton of plays. And again, he's a guy you could throw a slant to, and he's going to take it to the house. So dynamic player. I think he's going to be a much better NFL player than he was in college, and he was a pretty damn good college player.
Okay. All right. I'll definitely take a look at a couple of his games. Putting you on the spot, is there a certain game that kind of stands out? Is there a game against a big league school that I could go look at?
Yeah, well, I mentioned the game earlier, but I think Boise State is a great game to go watch because he was pretty explosive. Utah State, as you can imagine, is not playing a ton of
right
schools, but the best game that comes to mind immediately is Boise State.
Okay. Go to number 7 on your list, and I've gotten this comment a couple times, but Jalen Noel, Iowa State, has a teammate who it seems like the comments like a lot more than him. So let me know what you think about Jalen and why you have him number 7.
Sure.
And why you have no Higgins on your list, because I get that a couple times.
Yeah, that's a good question. Higgins is a good player. I'm not anti Jaden Higgins by any means. I just have guys a little bit above him. So Jalen Noel, I pronounced it as Noel for the entire season last year, and apparently it's actually pronounced Noel, like Noel. Seminoles. Yeah, Noel. But Jalen Noel is a guy that if you like Emeka Egbuka, you should like Jalen Noel. They do a lot of things similar. What I like about him, though, is they didn't use him as a short yardage slot receiver. Like he's getting the ball deep downfield pretty frequently. He kind of reminds me a little bit of maybe Parker Washington, but a better version of that. So if you were a Parker Washington fan when he was at Penn State, maybe kind of similar to that. Aaron loves Jalen Noel. His comp for him is Tyler Lockett. That ability to not be a big player physically, but make tough catches, come down with contested catches, make plays with the ball in his hands. Jalen Noel is, again, he's another guy that I would say is going to be a better NFL player than he was a college player. But again, he was super productive. Like if you look at what he did last year, he had 1,193 yards, 8 touchdowns. Average depth of target was 12.2 yards, which again, for a slot receiver, that's pretty far downfield. So I think he's more dynamic than people realize. And I actually he kind of got on my radar by watching Jaden Higgins film during the season. I was like, oh, who's the slot receiver? I just kind of kept watching him over and over. They're both really good players, but they're both completely different types of players. Higgins is that outside X type of receiver, big body. He's like 6'4", 214. So he's a big body guy. Jalen Noel's a guy I think you could fit him in pretty much any offense in the NFL, and he would immediately be able to contribute. He's really good.
Yeah, Aaron saying, he's talking about Ellick. We'll get to that one next. DJ Dog saying his intangibles are elite. The character and the work ethic is excellent. So we'll go to the next player on the list at number 8, Ellick. I know I'm gonna probably butcher this. Ayo Manor. Was I
Close.
even close?
Yeah, you're pretty close. It's Elik Ayo Manor.
Ayo Manor. I was not close at all. No.
I mean, you got the first name right, so I'll give you credit.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so he's a weird player. So he's an outside receiver. He's an
Uh-huh.
X. If you watch, I think the best game to watch for him would be 2023 Colorado, because you get to see him
Of
match up
course,
against
yeah.
Travis Hunter. And that was his monster. Like, that's his signature game. And what's so weird about it is if you watch the first quarter and a half, he's barely there. Like, he had a couple of drop passes, a couple off target throws by the quarterback, and you're like, I don't really see it. And then in the second half, he had like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and like 2 of them were against Travis Hunter. So he can be dynamic. There is a slight injury concern with him, so I don't know how many people know this, but he's actually torn his ACL, PCL, and MCL, all 3 in his knee. So he has a kind of questionable knee injury, but it was in the past. It was, I think, in 2021. I want to say maybe even prior to that. So he's played with that injury and still been successful. But I never saw that Colorado guy on film again. I saw some good games from him where he looks like a legit NFL receiver, and I think he's a second-round grade on most boards, and I think that's probably accurate. Like, he's a top 50 player in this class, I think, for most people. But I want to see that again. Like, I kept watching film, like, where's that guy at? Like, I never saw quite that explosiveness. But for his size, I mean, he's 6'1", 206, 4'4", 40 guy, had a 1.58 10-yard split. Again, productive, and he didn't play with great college quarterbacks either. So there was one kind of pet peeve of mine. I don't think he does great in scramble drill situations, which I didn't mention that as a thing that I look for in the next level. That's coachable. I thought he got a little bit lazy sometimes. And if you watch film when they played Oregon, quarterback's rolling out looking for a receiver, and he just kind of stops and is watching. I don't like spectators. I want you to be active, or at least try to get involved and work back to the ball. But he's, good run blocker, tough receiver, can make good plays. There's glimpses of and flashes of excellent football player. I don't think it's as consistent as it should be. And if it was, he would have been a first-round pick in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford guys are always going to be smart and hardworking. That's pretty much a trait of playing in Stanford. Yeah. Jason Layton asked the question. You brought this up about Emeka earlier. You said he's going to be a 700-800 yard, 6 touchdown guy. Do you see Elik as a wide receiver 1? Is he going to be just a good wide receiver 2?
That's a great question. I think he's a good wide receiver 2. I don't think he has wide receiver 1 ability. Maybe on a team like the Colts or something, like maybe he could be a good receiver for them. But I think he's a really solid wide receiver 2 for most teams.
Okay. Aaron said he had to get out of here. Thank you for joining us. Looks like a new name. So make sure you come back and join us again sometime at the 5th quarter. All right. Go next on the list. We got Jack Beck.
So his last name's pronounced Besh.
Besh.
Like mesh. There's a lot of players in this draft. Every draft class that have kind of tricky names. So Jack's kind of an interesting guy. He was originally an LSU player. LSU used him in really unique ways for his size profile. So if you watch LSU, they actually used him at tight end sometimes, more of like a split out Y type of, or maybe semi-H type of thing. But he actually played tight end a little bit in LSU. But TCU, playing with Savion Williams, really productive, has a actual connection to the Dallas Cowboys with a family member. Unfortunately, he was a big storyline of the Senior Bowl for 2 reasons. First off, he had a great game and helped his team win the Senior Bowl. And also his older brother, Tiger Besh, was one of the people that were killed in the, was it New Year's Eve? Where so he was killed in that New Year's Eve terrorist attack, hit by the vehicle that ran through the crowd. So it was an emotional heartstring moment for him, playing his first game after losing his older brother, and also made big plays. And he was the talk of Senior Bowl a lot that week. He's a bigger receiver, able to do things inside and outside. I think he makes a ton of contested catches. I think he's a better athlete than people thought he was going to be. What I don't love about him is I don't see him break a ton of tackles for his size. He should be a little bit harder to bring down. I did see a couple games where he stiffed arm defensive backs to create extra separation, but I think he's a guy that he's going to be a Mr. Reliable possession receiver. You need a tough catch. You need somebody to move the chains. He's the guy that's going to take the slant, run right through the linebacker, and pick up the yardage for you. From what I've heard, he's a great kid. He's a good athlete. I think he's probably a lower end wide receiver 2 in the NFL, but he's going to be a productive player and a good fit for teams. He's going to block hard, run good routes. He'll be a quarterback's best friend, safety valve type of guy.
Okay. Last receiver in your top 10, Tez Johnson from Oregon, put up a lot of good stats. We already talked about the wide receiver coach, so he's already real well coached.
So Tez
extremely small.
He is absolutely tiny. 5'9", 154 pounds. He is the complete opposite of most of the receivers we've talked about so far. I just have this love for small, shifty wide receivers. Like Tank Dell was one of my guys a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that profile. Tez Johnson, although he didn't run as fast as people thought he was going to be at the combine, people were thinking he was going to light it up, and he ran a 4.51. So a lot of people were shocked. He, unlike Matthew Golden, looks ridiculously fast football field wise. He has a great release package. When I was talking about guys that can find ways to get open, his release package is great. I think he does a great job working back to the ball. He's super shifty. He's a little put his foot in the dirt and stop on a dime, make people look stupid. He's a small frame guy, so there is worry on how is that going to translate at the next level. But I think with a lot of offenses and the way that teams are using at snap and push motion, he's going to be able to get open. And I think he's going to be a really good NFL player. Again, he's tiny. I understand the concerns there. Obviously, you're not going to want to line him up outside very often. And there's some concern on, is his body going to be able to hold up? But
right.
Again, we saw Tank Dell, smaller body guy. We have Devontae Turpin. We don't use him as much as probably fans would like to in the offense. But like we've seen guys with small bodies be able to have success.
Receiver at Kansas City right now. A name just escapes me.
For the Chiefs?
Yeah. The one they drafted last year from Texas.
Oh, Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not as small as this, but he's a small guy.
Yeah, and Worthy's a lot faster, obviously. But Tez Johnson's lightning quick, good release package, runs great routes, works back to the ball, can make things happen with the ball in his hands. He's super fun. So Tez Johnson typically would be a guy that you'd be like, I don't know about that, especially with a 4.5 40 in his size. But if you watch him on film, like he flies. Like there was no people aren't running him down from behind. You're not seeing that happen. He had no problem creating separation. He had no problem making plays with the ball in his hands. So I'm a huge fan of Tez Johnson. At special teams value too, had some punt return touchdowns. Like he's just a dynamic player. Get the ball in his hands and watch him cook. And again, having Junior Adams, his wide receiver coach at Oregon, I think kind of bodes well for the Cowboys if we do draft him. I have a 3rd round grade on him. I think he's probably somewhere in that mid to late 3rd round range on most boards, but that's where I have him at.
Okay. I see we got Jack Meeker joining us, longtime regular. Happy birthday to your wife, Angie. Thank you for taking a few minutes to join us tonight. Don't get in trouble trying to listen to what Matt has to say on your wife's birthday, but we definitely appreciate having you here.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Before we move on to defensive ends, I gotta let you know, Matt, your list has a lot more contention than Dom's did last week.
That's okay.
So let's go through a couple of them because I got my guy Jeff here, and he talks about this guy every day for the past month, and that's Dante Thornton from Tennessee. Height, weight, speed, demon, of course, 6'4", 4.3 speed. Where would you have him at in your receiver rankings? Is he like, well, let's backtrack. Who are your 11 and 12 guys?
So 11's Jaden Higgins. Chat brought him up several times. And 12 is Savion Williams. 13 I'll bring up because I saw his name in the chat is Torrey Horton. I'm still a big Torrey Horton fan too. So for me, he's a little bit further down the board. I have him at 21.
Okay.
So he's a late 5th round grade for me.
Okay.
Again, if you're betting on traits guy, he's an excellent one to take a chance on. What's weird though about his size, I mean, 6'4", 205, ran a 4.3 40, 1.51 10-yard split. You'd think he'd be ridiculously explosive, and you see it on film. I think his quarterback kind of held him back a little bit too with Nico, but he only had 2 missed tackles. Like with that size, you would think he'd be able to make people miss, but that's not really his strength. I think he's a guy that you want to get on deep routes, deep crossers, post routes, things like that, but you want to attack mostly downfield with. He has value in an NFL system, but I don't think he's a wide receiver 3 even. I think he's like a wide receiver 4 you bring in and just take some shots to occasionally. But if you're betting on traits, he's definitely a great late round option. I mean, he's probably one of the biggest guys later down the board. Maybe Daquan Felton or Theo Weiss would probably be the other guys that are 6'3" or taller that you might take a shot on later on. But Thornton, good player.
Yeah. So you mentioned Ty Felton. I've seen Isaiah Bond's name pop up quite a bit. Some people have him over Tez Johnson as a faster version. Where do you didn't mention Bonds in your 11, 12, 13. Where do you have Bonds at, and why is he not anywhere in the stratosphere of this list?
Yeah, I have Bond as a late 4th round pick.
Okay.
I liked him more at Alabama than I did at Texas. I was really hoping that transfer was going to be good for him and he was going to have the opportunity to thrive and explode. And Matthew Golden was the guy that kind of stole the show there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there were some injury issues with him, but I just don't see when I was talking about running routes with a plan, I see a dude who's fast and is just a fast guy. Like he's like a run past you type of guy. He can run routes. I don't want to make it sound like he's, completely stiff. Like he's a good athlete, but it doesn't seem like he has a good idea at all on how to set defensive backs up to create separation, which he should be able to do with his speed and his athleticism. He just kind of runs exactly the way that is drawn up on paper, and that's frustrating for me. So when Texas found creative ways to use him, you could see what his upside looked like. But if you watch a lot of the plays, he just kind of disappears in games. And later in the season, especially, there were a lot of games where it was like 0, 14, 30 yards, 40 yards, whatever. Like he just didn't explode in big moments. And I think that was kind of the recurring story with him was in big moments, Matthew Golden was the guy that, shined. And then Bond was just kind of out there running routes. So I could see him getting at the next level in the right system, maybe exploding, but I wasn't particularly impressed with him. I like the Alabama version better.
Okay. Jeff Seals of Draftman Fantasy and Show the World. Spoonie says, is Patterson a good Savion Williams comp?
I think that's the easy comp a lot of people are going to go to. I mean, when you look at guys with like that body type, there's not a ton of those, and there's not a lot of guys that were used as wide receiver / running backs. He was in Wildcat formation quite a bit at TCU, taking direct snaps. So I think if you're trying to comp him like a Ty Montgomery, Cordero Patterson, like those are kind of the natural comps you're going to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that. And he's a guy too, like he could be a really good NFL player. I just don't know. When we were talking about Luther Burden being situational, I think he's much more situational than Luther Burden is.
Okay.
In the right system, he could be a really good player. He also could be like a Treylon Burks who should succeed. It just doesn't.
Had to bring that name up, huh, Matt?
Yeah, sorry. But Savion Williams is fun on film when you watch him and the way that he was utilized. So if he's in the right system with the right creative coach, I could see him being a good NFL player. But yeah, to answer the question, I think Patterson's probably the easiest comp to give him.
Okay. I'll bring up 2 more wide receivers, then we'll move on. So you talked about Tez Johnson with the slower than expected 40 time. There was also a receiver out of Miami who had an extremely slow 40 time. Yeah. Is he just completely off your wide receiver list, or do you still have faith that he could be an NFL player?
No, I still have faith he can be an NFL player. And in fact, I think he'll be a pretty solid one. The latest reports on that were that he actually had a hamstring injury and tried to run through it and thought he was still going to time well. He says that he's ran 4.5s all off season, but if you say it, but it's not on film that it actually happened.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for him to actually do a quick private workout. Like we've seen some other players like Will Johnson hosted his own private workout after the Michigan Pro Day so that he could run. It would be really nice if Restrepo would do that just to kind of alleviate that, but he plays fast on film. I don't really have any concern that he'll be able to separate and make plays at the next level. I think he's a pretty solid slot option for teams. Does a lot of things right. I have him a little bit lower than others. I've seen some people that have him as a 2nd round pick. For me, he's a late round 3, early 4 guy, but he's a really good player, fun, productive, does a lot of things right. I definitely think he's a wide receiver 3 at the next level, but he could be a really productive slot.
Sorry, guys, I didn't say his name. Restrepo from Miami. My mistake. One more receiver, and then I got a couple more questions. Then we'll go to defensive ends. So another receiver on your list, Kyle Williams, Washington State, put up some really good stats this year. Mm-hmm. Where do you have him at, and why does he not crack your top 10?
Good question. So Kyle Williams, I started watching last year when Cam Ward played for Washington State prior to his transfer. Um, Kyle Williams is a good player. He had a really good Senior Bowl. I know Foots the King fell in love with him there and talks about him a lot, and a lot of people did. Makes a lot of plays. He's a really good player. He had an 1,100-yard season. I think he was just under 1,200 yards, had almost 15 touchdowns. So really productive. There's some he's not the biggest guy, right? He's 5'10", 190. I think he's going to be another guy that we talk about that plays probably more in the slot at the next level. But a lot of teams are using, bunch formations, and you can have multiple slots on the field, and spread offenses. You can have multiple guys playing on the inside and moving around. I don't think he's does a tremendously good job of with contested catches personally. He had some contested catches. I think that's probably one of the areas. And again, some of that's going to be with his size profile. But overall, I think he's a smooth player. I think he's probably going to go somewhere in round 3, 4-ish. He's actually the first guy I have in round 4 on my board.
Okay. 2 more questions. We got one from Jason Layton. Let's just say you got Ted and Genty on the board, which I don't think will happen. Are you still considering wide receiver, or would running back kind of be the locked in position?
So if it's those two, I'm taking Genty, and I just think Genty is by far one of the best prospects in this class. He everything about his game translates so well. And if you look at him from like a stable metric standpoint, or you look at him from yards created, missed tackles, forced, broken tackles, literally anything that translates well at the next level compared to any of the other backs in the class, he's on like a completely different stratosphere. Like, he's so spectacular. He would be a slam dunk pick for the Cowboys. And I know a lot of fans don't want to take running backs in round 1. Yeah. He's the exception where I'm like, I don't care where you take him. If he's on the board, you take him. I think outside of him, I know that Mel Kiper's been mocking Omarion Hampton, which you and Dom talked about. Again, really nice player. A lot of people are high on him for good reason. He's a good back. I personally don't think they'll take him at 12, despite what Mel's saying. I know Brian Broaddus was talking about that with Vach on their show, the Doing All Right podcast. He said from what he's heard, he doesn't think Hampton to the Cowboys at 12 is realistic. So should the Cowboys be locked in at wide receiver? If they can find the right one, yeah, absolutely. I think if T-Mac is on the board, you absolutely take him at 12 and you feel thrilled about it. I think Golden has a good shot to go 12 if the Cowboys like him. I personally, although I have Burden higher than Golden, I think Burden and Emeka are probably trade back options. So I think there's a pretty high likelihood they will go wide receiver, because look at the guys they brought in for their official 30s and look at the guys they had in their formals. Yeah. They met with all the top receivers. There's obviously a clear interest there. I don't think they're locked into any position, though. I think there's a very realistic chance that a defensive player might be the best player on the board, or maybe an offensive lineman falls or something, especially if we're not seeing 2 or 3 quarterbacks go ahead of us like we were hoping. That kind of changes what the board looks like at 12. So wide receiver would be fun if that happens, but I don't know that they're necessarily locked in. I definitely think there's a very clear interest on their side, but we have to see if the right combo falls.
Okay. Last question, and this one's kind of a loaded question. Taking the first round out of it, in the other round, kind of knowing from what you hear from the coaching staff about what we're going to expect from the offense, a lot more movement, quicker routes, shorter splits. What's a receiver that you think would be a really good fit for what the coaching staff is going to do based off what they said? Is that a Matthew Golden type guy?
Yeah, I think out of the list that we have, I mean, there's a few names that kind of jump out. I think T-Mac, just because of what he can do, right, definitely stands out. But based on, the questions based on what Schottenheimer and the staff saying, to fit that offense, Matthew Golden stands out, Emeka stands out, Jalen Knoll stands out, and Tez Johnson stands out. Those are probably the 4 that make the most sense based on what they described.
Okay. That's kind of same lines I was thinking also. All right, so we're at 50 minutes. We still have to go through defensive ends. Matt, I hope you can stay with us about another 35 minutes.
Yeah, I can do that.
I don't hear the baby crying, but we'll go through it quick.
No, so far, so good.
Okay. All right, and once again, thank you guys for joining us. Got a lot of people watching on X. After the show's over, if you could, go to my profile, hit that link, hit that subscribe button. Or if you'd like to leave some comments right now, go ahead. and transition over to YouTube so that we can get your thoughts on everything we've talked about. Okay, let's go ahead and transition the list over to defensive ends, where, again, once we get past the top five, well, I'm familiar with a lot of these guys, but I don't know a lot, so I'm really going to be interested in your thoughts on them. I see you got an Ole Miss guy on here, so I like that.
Yeah.
Number one, consensus, Abdul Carter, Penn State. What do you love about him as a player?
Well, I want to throw a quick acknowledgement there. You won't see Jalen Walker on this list. I personally have him as an edge, but most people have him listed at linebacker, so I left him off this list. And these are guys that are just true edge guys. So everybody on this list is a defensive end or a stand-up edge primarily. Walker doesn't fit that, so that's why he's not on the list. Just calling that out really quick.
Yeah.
So Abdul Carter is one of those guys, like, I'll just read my notes to you for these prospects. I think that'll be easier.
Yeah.
So for him, I wrote freak, moved from linebacker to edge. He's still learning the position. Had some messy games against some good offensive tackles. Two good games to look at would be Oregon versus Josh Connerly and Minnesota versus Ariante Ursary. Those both come to mind, where there's some reps where he wins, some reps where he loses. You can tell throughout the game he's kind of putting it together on which moves he's going to do and how he's going to attack these offensive tackles. I think some of the pass rush strategy he's still learning on the fly, but there's just some amazing flashes. Like I wrote, his flashes are substantial. He's got natural ability, and it's easy to imagine what his ceiling will look like. He wears number 11. Quite a few guys in this class do, which is kind of funny if you watch. There's a ton of edges in this year that are number 11. We'll call it the Micah Parsons effect.
Yeah.
But he's by far the closest from an athletic profile that fits that description. And again, even in his first year playing the position, he still had a 22.8 pass rush win rate, which is crazy. He still had double-digit sacks, and that's his first season actually as a true edge. So from where he is now versus what he is in 2 or 3 years, he very easily could be a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL. He has every athletic trait you could possibly want. And the fact that his learning curve was so small, transitioning from linebacker to edge year 1, there's no reason not to be excited. He should easily be a top 3 pick in this class.
Okay. That was pretty much a no-brainer. Even with the foot concerns, he's still the top guy, no question.
Yep.
Players 2 and 3, both of them kind of have the same 2 questions. The first question is, they both have some off-field / character issues. Do those issues bother you? And secondly, they're both a little small for defensive ends. Do you think they'd be better as stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker guys, especially James Pierce, who ran that 4-4? Or do you think they can play with their hand in the dirt as a 4-3 guy?
Yeah, so there's going to be a theme with this list where there's guys kind of lumped together for a reason.
Yeah.
We'll get to that with Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart. The reason I have them back to back. So Green was actually the guy I was more concerned about his size watching film. He was listed at like 237, 239, something like that. Mm-hmm. He checked in at the combine at 251. I'm not convinced he's going to be able to keep that weight on, so I don't know how that profiles to the next level. He has the more serious offenses, in my opinion, than James Pierce, although Pierce seems to be the guy that teams in the media are more concerned about, which is kind of weird. So for those that don't know, Mike Green had 2 sexual assault allegations, one in high school, one in college. Didn't have charges for either one. Both of them were dismissed or nothing came of it. That was actually one of the reasons he transferred from Virginia to Marshall. He was very upfront with it at the combine and actually brought it up on his own and told teams he's happy to answer questions about it. So again, I don't know the backstory. I do know that he was never charged for it, and teams seem to not be too concerned about whatever the details are. From a player standpoint, my notes are he's my favorite pass rusher in this class. His size is definitely a concern. He's listed in the 230s, but and looked like that, but bulked up at 251. Not sure he's going to be able to keep that weight on. I talk about the domestic violence, but in terms of him as a actual pass rusher, I actually think he does a pretty good job of setting the edge well in the run game for a guy his size. He does get completely engulfed by bigger offensive linemen. So if it's a power scheme and they're running right at him, it might be an issue, but I actually thought he did a pretty decent job for his size setting the edge. I even saw him get sealed off a few times by tight ends in the run game. He's one of those quick twitch athletes. He's a little bit reckless at times, but he's a force as a pass rusher. I would not be surprised at all if he's a frequent double sack guy in the NFL. again, his size might have some limitations, but also Micah's 6'2", 250, 245, 250. They're relatively close in size. Really good player, tremendously productive. So he's actually my favorite pass rusher in terms of just go get the quarterback guy. If I was betting on somebody and I needed a sack, he's the guy I'd pick.
Okay.
James Pierce is another similar guy. He's 6'5", 245, ran a 4.47 at the combine. My notes are kind of funny for him. His suddenness and explosiveness as a pass rusher is crazy. He wins so quickly on reps that it's sometimes comical. Like you don't even realize what happened in real time. You kind of have to watch it back. He had a 23% pass rush win rate, which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Pass rush win rate is how often you're able to beat the offensive lineman or blocker in 2.5 seconds or less. So he did that 23% of the time, which is the highest in this draft class. He's not the highest motor guy, but when he wins, it's usually extremely quick. I think he's okay in the run game. He's not a liability, but he's not great at that. He's a little bit stiffer, actually, than I thought he was going to be going into it. He does a good job with beating people off the snap. He shoots out like a cannon. He actually has pretty good handwork, has a little bit of bend, but he's a little bit stiffer than I thought he would be. Originally, I had him as a top 10 pick heading into 2024. Okay. Now I think he's probably more of a late round 1, early round 2 guy. I know that his character issues seem to be he had a speeding ticket, reckless driving, DUI. So he sounds like he should be playing at Georgia instead of Tennessee. But from what I've heard, he's maybe not the easiest guy to be around in the locker room and has some like anger issues. And I know that Dane Brugler and his guy said a scout said that he wanted James Pierce to prove that he loves football. So when you hear stuff like that, that's kind of like that's why it's scarier to me than Mike Green's allegations, even though Mike Green's allegations were more serious of nature, but seem to have been alleviated.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually watching him, James Pierce, I mean, when he's in a pass rushing situation, he jumps off the screen. I do want to point this out because I think it's extremely important for people to take note in. He played 254 snaps this year. He's averaged the last 2 years like 33 to 35 snaps a game. That's just Tennessee's rotation. Georgia does the same thing where they're heavily subbing their front seven. They don't really care who you are. You're going to get subbed in and out to get fresh bodies on the field. And he still is extremely productive. But the pass rush win rate, that translates well. His first step being quick, that translates well. Mm-hmm. I think in the right system, he could be a super productive player. So I'm a big fan of James Pierce.
Okay. So while we're on those three, let's see. Somebody asked the question. Jason Layton been bringing some great questions tonight, Jason. So thank you. How many DNs do you see going before 12? You kind of just hinted that you think Pierce is going to be a late first round guy. So do you think it's Carter and Green, or do you even have Green in the top 12?
I don't think Green goes in the top 12. I think Carter is a lock for the top 3.
Right.
Sounds like the Giants right now are betting odds favorite for him, even though we were hoping they were going to go quarterback. I think there's a very high likelihood Jalen Walker, the linebacker edge, whatever you want to lump him at, goes before us. Carolina at 8 or 9 seems like a likely spot for him to go. They seem like they're going to go pass rusher. So I think 2 are going to be off the board before our pick.
So you think even with Thibodeau and Burns that the Giants still take Carter at 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, I do. He's the betting odds favorite, actually, too.
Is Hunter off the board in that assumption?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the odds favorites right now, if you care about that type of stuff, is Cam Ward's going number 1. Uh-huh. He's the odds favorite. Travis Hunter going number 2.
Okay.
And Carter going number 3. So that's how they have it right now.
Okay.
Either way, I don't think he makes it past number 3, whether he goes second or third. I think Hunter and Carter, in whatever order, are going to go 2 and 3 most likely.
Yeah, in terms of talent, he's definitely not going past 3. I would just be shocked to see the Giants do that. I would like to see it because I don't like how they use their defensive ends. Thibodeau hasn't really lived up to expectations. Burns has had flashes, but nothing like he had at Carolina. So
I think you got to look at where they're at as a team, though. Like they signed Russell Wilson, they signed Jameis Winston. Obviously, you would like to have a young quarterback, but if you're not sold on Shedeur Sanders as being a true top 5 type of caliber player, and you have an Abdul Carter on the board, and you're playing in the NFC East that has good quarterbacks and lots of elite pass rushers, and you're the only team that doesn't have that, or one of the few teams that could heavily, stand to benefit from taking that, I think it'd be really hard to walk away from Carter there. You could, I think what they probably will do is draft Carter and then try to move back up for Jackson Dart or Milroe or whoever, Tyler Shuck, whoever they think is a quarterback that could help them. But I think Carter's he's just too good to pass up on.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can understand that completely. Next defensive end, I'm sure I'm going to butcher his last name, Donovan Ezuraku,
You actually got
Boston
it right.
College. I
Yep, you
got
got
it.
it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Boston College, another one of those athletic defensive ends. What do you like about him?
Yeah, he's 6'2", 248 for those that haven't had a chance to watch him. He's a stand-up edge rusher. That's the way that he was utilized at Boston College. Highly productive. Has a really nice inside swim move. He does an outside jab step to set it up and then comes back inside. Actually, quite a few of his moves are to work back inside. I saw a spin move a few times. He rips a lot. He seems to have a really high pass rush tool bag already for players in this class. In fact, I think out of all the edge rushers in this class, he probably has the deepest tool bag that he goes to. If you watch him like 10 or 15 plays in a row, you'll see multiple different ways that he's setting up offensive linemen to beat them. For his size, I think he rushes with a plan, which is what makes him so effective. Like if you watch him, he seems to have a clear, I know my path. I know what I'm going to do to set this offensive lineman up so I can get back inside or work outside. He's a willing run defender. It's not necessarily his strength, but he's definitely like a go get him edge rusher. Like you line him up, whether he's a 3-4 stand up linebacker or you line him up at defensive end, he's going to be productive and he's going to go make plays. It's just what he is. He had an 18.2% pass rush win rate, which is good. Generally, anything over like 16 is considered pretty good, and the closer you get to the 20s, the better. So he was pretty good there. 60 pressures this year, 20 quarterback hits, 14 sacks. I mean, extremely productive. But what I like about him is he seems to have a plan. He doesn't. I think his ceilings or his floor is going to be relatively high. I think he's day one ready as an NFL pass rusher.
Yeah. All right, going to number 5. Somebody said DJ Dog said this is his bust concern.
Yeah,
I can understand why, but I still have him pretty high on my list. Princely Umanmielen, Ole Miss. I'll let you talk about him.
All right. Yeah. So Princely Umanmielen is a Florida transfer. Ole Miss, was only a 1-year starter. He was really productive as a pass rusher, double-digit sacks and under 300 pass rush snaps. And again, that stuff matters. Like if you look at some of the edge rushers in this class have 400, 450 pass rush snaps. To be able to do it in under 300 snaps and still get double digits is pretty impressive, especially in the SEC. He had the second highest pass rush win rate in this class of all the edges, and that was at 22.8%, which is pretty spectacular. He's not great against the run. He's willing. He has the frame to add more weight. He was 6'4", 244. I think he could probably add another 8 to 10 pounds and be pretty good there. He ran a 4.7 40, which isn't super fast, but I think he plays quicker than that anyway, so I'm not too concerned with that. He has a nice subtle inside shoulder dip that allows him to get under offensive tackles' arms. So that's actually one of my favorite things. A lot of times people refer to that just as bend, but he times it so well. Like when you see him fire off the ball right before the offensive lineman's going to reach the arms out to engage him, he dips the shoulder and it just makes them miss the target and allows him to slip through. So
that was on full display in the Georgia game.
Unfortunately, that's just true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's a good player. I know some people like Vach loves him. He's super high on him. I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to be probably a situational pass rusher in the NFL. Yeah. That's what he was in college. I don't think he's an every down starter, but he's a guy that I could see coming in and being, a pretty consistent 7 to 8 sack a year without starting guy, which is pretty valuable.
Yeah, he's a very hot or cold player. He revs the engine up on 3rd and long. Anything outside of that is just going through the motions.
Yeah.
But the traits are definitely there. Long arms, quick first step, already has an understanding of pass rush moves, kind of what you just talked about with the dip. So, yeah, I know a lot of people don't have him this high, but glad to see you do. Jeff says, is he Dante Fowler?
I actually think that's
I can see that, Jeff. That's a great comp.
Perfect comp for him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the Dante Fowler that got drafted 3rd overall.
Right.
What he is in the NFL now, yeah, that's a really good comp.
Yeah. All right. So 6 and 7, Williams and Stewart. Actually, last week, Dom did defensive tackles, and he had Stewart as a defensive tackle. And I kind of went back and forth with him a little bit because I think he's more of an end than a tackle also.
Yeah.
So talk about your Georgia guy first.
I feel like you have to lump these together. Like you're betting on traits for either guy. It doesn't matter which one you draft or what order you draft them. Michael Williams, 20 years old. I think he's the 3rd youngest player in this draft class. He doesn't play a ton of snaps. Georgia rotation. He played 250 snaps, this year in pass rush. So again, that stuff kind of plays into your ability to thrive. But they're kind of the same guy. They're freak athletes. They both have huge ceilings. They're not even close in terms of pass rushers on where they potentially could go. I think for Michael and Shamar Stewart, you hope that they're Trayvon Walker. Weren't super productive in college, had incredible traits, drafted early by the Jags, #1 overall. People thought that was crazy. He's had double-digit sacks back-to-back years. I think that's kind of what you're hoping for. Both of them have really long arms. They have good play strength.
Yeah.
Michael in particular plays a little bit upright at times, but he's really good against the run. If you want games for him, watch Ohio State and Texas. I think those were probably the best games that he had on film. He had a pretty good game against Kentucky in 2023 too. I think an off-season work program with them working with a Chuck Smith or one of the pass rush specialists could do wonders for them. I think both of them right now project as they could be DeMarcus Lawrence type of guy, where they're good in the run game, do enough as pass rushers, and you hope that you could build off of it. You kind of have to lump them together though. There's gray areas. It's not always black and white in the draft. If you're ranking them as just edge prospects, they're probably not 6 and 7. But when you throw into the situation what they could develop into,
the traits,
you kind of have to rank them higher than what they actually would be just based on film. From a pass rush win rate, since I talked about that before, you have Michael Williams at 11% and you have Shamar Stewart at 12.4. Neither of those are ideal. One of the guys had 6 sacks. That was Michael. Stewart had 4 sacks. 5 and 2. My apologies. 5 sacks and 2 for Stewart. But you see it flash. When you see the flashes, it's tremendous. But they're not there yet as prospects. So anybody taking them, whether you take them in round 1 or round 2, you really have to have the right system in place, and you have to hope that they continue to evolve as players, because right now they're not going to be impact players in the NFL day one. But they could be, 8 weeks into the season or a year and a half into the season. So it's kind of a Mozzie Smith. You draft them based on traits and hope that they develop. Mozzie hasn't developed where we wanted him to go. Those two guys, they may go the Trayvon Walker route and explode. I think a pretty good comp for what they could be is maybe Jadeveon Clowney. I know Clowney's kind of more of a freak athlete than them, but they're both high-end athletes. I think that's probably a realistic ceiling for them.
Yeah. But Mike Hale's young though, and he
20 years old,
and he hasn't played a lot. And those traits, I think his arms are 34 inches.
Yeah, 34 and 3/8, 82-inch.
Yeah, 34.
Wingspan.
Yeah.
Shamar has an 84-inch wingspan. They both have 34-inch arms.
Right.
6'5", 260, 6'5", 267. So, they're both. You're rolling a dice, but in the draft, once you get past the first 15 picks, it's a dice roll. Even the first 15 picks is a dice roll. So if you're betting on anything, I'm more of a risk it for the biscuit type of guy. So I'm willing to bet on traits. I know a lot of fans wouldn't be super excited if either one was drafted at 12, but if you hit, you're thrilled. And if you miss, then that's just the reality of the draft. So that's why I have them at 6 and 7, because I think they could be really good players. I don't think they're day one NFL starters right now, but their traits are so appealing. It'd be hard not to take one of them if they fall to the right spot.
Okay. Next player, number 8, Elijah Roberts, small school guy. Don't know much about him. I'm going to lean on what you have on him. What type of player is he?
So Elijah Roberts, I think I have the perfect draft comparison for him. So first off, he played at SMU. So if you live in the Dallas area, you know that school very well. 6'3", 285. 33-inch arms, 82-inch wingspan, 4'7", 840. But the fun stuff, he reminds me of Darius Robinson. If you liked him last year from Missouri, that's kind of what he is. He's that type of guy. So he has the size, the athletic profile. Their play style is very similar. He's really strong. He doesn't get moved easily at all in the run game. Plays with composure, quickly sheds blockers to find the ball. If you want a Tank Lawrence type of replacement in this draft class who has some pass rushing ability, he's probably the best option or one of the better options of this group. They lined him up everywhere. He played 5 tech, a little bit of wide 9, was standing up, edge rusher sometimes. He's a guy that can move inside and play 3 tech and 4-eye also. He had 60 pressures, 8 sacks, and a 22.4 pass rush win rate. So from a number standpoint and a physical standpoint, he's a guy that very easily translates to be a nice starter pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I see the fan base isn't as excited about defensive ends as they were about wide receivers. The
I see
views
that.
are still here, but nobody's commenting. So, guys, let us know your thoughts on any of these players, any players you want us to talk about. I see DJ Dog asked a question about Powell Ryland from Virginia Tech.
Mhm.
You have any thoughts on them as a player, Matt?
Yeah. So first thought is Virginia Tech should have been way better than what they were. They had several NFL draft prospects. I think there's like 7 guys that are going to get picked in the first 4 or 5 rounds from Vatech.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Tom Downey loves him. I know that some people have him as high as a top 50 player on their board. He's, again, one of those guys, good pass rusher, 6'2", 258, 31-inch arms, 76-inch wingspan. So not quite the freak arm length-wise as some of the other guys, but from just being a pure pass rusher, I mean, he's one of the better ones in this class. Had a 16.8% pass rush win rate, which is good enough. 14 sacks this year, 48 pressures. I like him. I think he's a good player. I have him number 16 on my board as a early 4th round grade. He's the first 4th round edge that I have.
Okay.
But so I like him. I'm not as excited about him as the other guys, but I understand why people like him. He's a good player.
All right. So next up, number 9, Brandon Swinson, LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Plays with a lot of power, strong hands. I like him as a player. I think he's a solid base end. What do you like about him to have him as number 9 on your list over a player like Jack Sawyer, who's a lot more decorated?
I'm higher on him than other people are, which is totally fine.
I am too.
I'm cool being different from other people, but he's a stand-up edge rusher, has nice bend, quick first step, wins with his hands. One of my favorite things about him is when he gets home, he brings the physicality. Like he crushes quarterbacks. All of his sacks are violent. All of his tackle for losses are like him slamming running backs down. Like teams maybe not as high on him as I am, but I have a 2nd round grade on him. He has a 22% pass rush win rate, generated 60 pressures on just 312 snaps. I think if you look for a showcase game, sorry to bring this one up, Marcus, but I think Ole Miss was a great game for him.
It was.
But again, right. 60 pressures, 9 sacks, 22.2% win rate on 312 snaps is really good. I think he's a guy that probably translates well as a stand-up edge or maybe a down edge, but 6'3", 255. Like he has the size profile that he could be an every down starter in the NFL. I think he's again elevating as a player. I think last year was a big step up for him from what he was able to do as a pass rusher. So I just love the idea of a defensive end who's going to get in the backfield and take off a quarterback's helmet, but legally, and just absolutely destroy them. Like he's a violent player. He's easy to like.
Yeah, he's definitely higher on my list than other people's. Also, I just like how physical he plays at the line of scrimmage. Has very strong hands. Knows how to use his power, which is always good for a college player to transition to NFL. Because as we know, one thing players deal with, especially on the front lines, is knowing how to play with power.
Right.
DJ Dog says Swinson has a lot of scouts in his corner.
He does.
I can't see. What's the emoji? Is that a popcorn emoji?
No, it's like a teacher with a chalkboard behind, like a professor or teaching or whatever. Yeah.
All right. So last on the list, and a couple of people thought you may have him higher. Jack Sawyer, Ohio State. Personally, I think people just fell in love with him because he was playing in the playoffs. But what do you like about Sawyer?
Yeah, so Sawyer is a guy that I could very easily see people having him maybe as high as like 6 or 7, like where I have Michael and Shamar. If you remove them from the trait standpoint, like that might be his ceiling in this class. What I like about him is old school vibes. Like he doesn't necessarily have any real like elite trait, but he has good production, nonstop motor, plays well against the run. He's effective as a pass rusher, has a really nice pass rush awareness, and bats a lot of balls down at the line. He batted down 6 passes in 2024. I think he's an immediate plug and play player. Maybe not a starter, but he has such a high floor. Maybe the ceiling may not be as high as some of the other guys in the class, but I could very easily see him being like a 12-year player in the NFL. Definitely. Maybe not always as a starter, but he's going to have guys that just love him in the clubhouse. Probably will never make a Pro Bowl. It's possible he will, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's just consistently like good against the run, good as a pass rusher, just really, a solid like 7 player out of 10 year in, year and out. And the fans love him. Be very popular in the clubhouse. I just don't think he's going to be like a massive superstar in the NFL. But he's so easy to like. Like if you like that old school, Mendoza said lunch pail guy, he's absolutely that. Like he's just going to keep working and fighting and grinding until the whistle blows over and over and over again. So he's a good guy. Like he's not my type of pass rusher. I love like the twitched up bendy guys. So he's not usually my bread and butter, but I have him and Elijah Robertson kind of guys like that this year because I see the value of it.
See, I like guys who play with power at the line of scrimmage, and I love guys who make tackles in the backfield. Mm-hmm. So I actually have JT Tuimoloau a little bit higher than him. His
I can see
pass
that
rush mate, because he just knows how to play in the backfield. He knows how to read and react off of defensive ends and make plays at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I can see that. They're both going to be, I think most people on their boards are going to have them somewhere relatively close together.
Yeah.
They're kind of comparable type of players. I think a lot of what I said about Jack Sawyer applies to JT. JT took a huge step up in terms of being a pass rusher this year from where he was last year. That was my biggest concern, is he's just a high motor guy that's going to be like a 5 or 6 sack a year guy, which is valuable, but I'm not taking that guy in the top 50 in a class.
Oh, I wouldn't either.
But this year, based on what he did as a pass rusher, and you see kind of the emergence there, he could be a top 50 player on some people's boards.
Okay. Before we go to the comments, because we got a couple of comments, who are your 11 and 12?
Okay, so I have Landon Jackson, who DJ Dog just asked about, at 11. Yep. And then I have your guy, Jared Ivey, at 12.
Okay.
I like Jared Ivey a lot.
I was just going to bring him up also. I think he's better suited as a 3-tech.
I could see that. I mean, his size, he's kind of right on that verge, 6'5", 270, long arms. Like he could be either one.
I think he needs to put on about 10 more pounds and just be a penetrating 3-tech. I don't think he could be an NFL end, but I really like him as a player.
There's always a need for penetrating 3-techs too. So if he can do that, he definitely has the frame for it. So
he does.
If he's able to do that, he could have a good career like that. I like him. I'm a little bit higher on him than other people are, but I think he's a good player. I have JT at 13, by the way. So 11 is Landon Jackson, 12 Ivy, 13 is JT, and then 14 is Ashton Gillott, which we didn't talk about. But good player.
Okay. Spoony asking about defensive end from Texas A&M. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so there's quite a few guys in this class that did not benefit from their transfer. So he played at Purdue in 2023 and was really good. He was a double-digit sack guy. He went to Texas A&M and was opposite of Shamar Stewart, and they have these two high-trait athletes that should have shined, and he just didn't. Like, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if it was he was dealing with like a nagging injury or something, but like he was not impressive at all to me. Like I was really hoping to see more from him. His pass rush win rate was okay, but on film he just wasn't impactful on a lot of big games, and it was kind of disappointing to see that. So I think if you watch him, you're kind of circling back to the 2023 film, which is also what I said about Luther Burden. And there's quite a few guys in this class that you're like, you probably should go back a year and see that was the better version of them. Landon Jackson, since DJ Dog asked about Landon. So Landon's a guy that did benefit from a transfer. Originally went to LSU. I'm actually really happy for him and his story, because I don't know if you guys remember this. He went viral when he was a high school senior. He was very tall, lanky guy, really skinny. And he was at one of those like top national camps where they have all the best pass rushers for the classic. It was an all-American camp, I'm pretty sure. And they had a drill where they're going through, weaving between the pads and, slapping it and showing their power. And at the time, he just wasn't strong. So when you see him side by side with these other guys, like he's this tall, skinny kid and he's like slapping the pad and it's not moving, and people made fun of him. Well, he actually developed into a 6'6", 264-pound dude with a lot of power, and was a really good player. So he ended up transferring from LSU to Arkansas, had a pretty good year last year. His pass rush win rate is terrible. So that's like the downside to him. But his actual upside is good. Like he seems to know how to play under control. He has more power than you'd think for a guy his size. I don't think he has a great pass rush tool bag, which we talked about earlier. I think he probably needs to develop more. Kind of, if you watch him on tape, reminds me a little bit of Andre Carter, the Army defensive end that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
I think he's a better player than that, but he lit it up at the combine. Like I didn't expect him to run a 4.6 40, 40-inch vert, 10.9 broad jump. Like he, from a athletic standpoint, he's way more athletic than I thought. I like him. I don't know if he's going to be a immediate day one impact player, but I think when he adds even more weight to his frame, like he could probably add another 10 pounds pretty easily. He could turn into a pretty good player at the next level.
Okay. And we can't get out of here without Mendoza giving us a couple of names.
I don't know. I know those names. I don't know anything about them. So that's going to be a Mendoza conversation.
Exactly. We definitely appreciate it. So if you guys want to look at a couple of extra names at the bottom of the draft, make a note of Tyler Batty, Davin Van, Jasheen Davis, and Chico Bennett Jr. 4 Mendoza specials.
Yep.
I'll definitely go back and take a look at those.
I don't know how Mendoza finds these guys. Like
I don't
know. Like most people look at the consensus boards and start in round 1. I feel like Mendoza's like, who's not getting any buzz at all? I'm going to start with them and then work my way up. But Mendoza's like his what is that? Rolodex is like crazy with players. Like, he knows so many players that I'm like, I've never heard of them, and I watch a ton of film. Like Mendoza's one of the guys that's like a true gym to have as a friend, because he throws names out that I'm like, I've never heard of him. Let me go check him out. So if you're ever bored and want something to do, just hit up Mendoza and he'll give you like 27 guys off the top of his head that you probably haven't watched that are good.
Oh, 100%. Last question, and then we'll talk about your draft sheet. So I asked the question, well, 2 more questions. One, personally, I think we have enough guys who could play left defensive end. I think we need to have another backup for Micah. Who's a guy day 2, day 3 that we should look at as a possible backup right defensive end?
Yeah, so I have kind of 2 guys that stand out. One was brought up in the chat, the Virginia Tech defensive end. I think he's probably going to go somewhere around 4 or 5-ish. He might go earlier, but Antoine Powell-Ryland, good player. Call him APR for short. It's what a lot of people call him. But I talked about him already, so I'll kind of skip that portion. But the other guy is UCLA, Oluwafemi Oladejo. So he's a guy converted from linebacker to edge. Last year was his first year at defensive end. Had 7 sacks, 33 pressures, 10.5% pass rush win rate. All that stuff doesn't sound great, but when you watch him, like when he wins, it's pretty impressive. Like you can see that he's still learning the game, but his traits and kind of natural instincts when they take over, it's pretty spot on. Like I think he's going to be a player that gets drafted somewhere in round 3, 4, 5, and turns into be a guy that you remember at the next level.
All right, DJ Dog bringing up David Walker from Central Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. He had a good Senior Bowl. Going to Central Arkansas, I'm not going to lie and say I've watched a lot of his film. I only had 1 game of all 22. He beat the brakes off of all the guys that tried to block him. But again, I don't have enough sample size to really say what he is. I know at the Senior Bowl he was impressive and a lot of people like him, but I don't know enough about him to really give you a definitive answer.
Okay, Jeff has a generic question. We got a couple of 5th round picks. Now we got a couple of 7s also. What position or positions, plural, do you feel we should double dip at in this draft?
So I don't think we should double dip at wide receiver. I think we should hit wide receiver early, and then we're probably okay there. I think running back, adding Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, we don't necessarily have to double dip, but this class is so strong, it would be the perfect time to double dip. So I would love to do that. Defensive tackle, we need still. So defensive tackle is the easy one of the 3. So I would go DT, running back, wide receiver in that order. There's quite a few positions we could double dip at. We could double dip at corner, would be a good spot to double dip at too. This class is pretty solid. But I think DT makes the most sense. We could use 1 tech and 3 tech help.
Okay. This one's unrelated. Then I asked my last question. We need weapons. How would you feel if we took Warren at 12 instead of if Genty and Tet were gone? Would you feel better about Warren over Golden or Burton?
Yeah, so immediately I would not be thrilled about the pick. I love Tyler Warren as a player. I have a 1st-round grade on him. So I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. I would rather roll the dice on one of the wide receivers than take a tight end. I think we have enough in the tight end room to get by. I don't think we have enough in the wide receiver room to continue to get by. Like we need help for Dak and CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
So if we're taking a weapon and Genty's off the board and T-Mac's off the board, I would rather roll the dice on Golden, Emeka, Burden, or whoever than Tyler Warren, although I have Tyler Warren higher on my board. But positional value is kind of trumping that, and I don't think he's as good as Brock Bowers was last year, as terms of a receiver, but I think he's going to be a good receiver in the NFL. So I don't think it's a good receiving tight end. I don't think it's enough to justify taking him at 12.
Okay. So last week during the show, Don made a change to his list mid-show.
Yeah.
Do you have a change that you'd like to make before you leave?
No.
Okay.
I feel good about my list so far.
All right. So everybody's watching. I will post Matt's list tomorrow. So feel free to share that and critique it however you like. Before we get out of here, Matt's not only just an expert at certain positions, he's just a great overall draft guy. And he made what I would consider one of the best draft guys that I've seen. It rivals what you see with some of the more well-known people in Cowboys and just sports media. Let's just go through it really quick, Matt. Tell us, how did you come up with this, and where can people find it, and what are some of the high points of what you've achieved right here?
Yeah, so we'll start with where you are right now. So what I was trying to accomplish is when I started getting into the draft, I was a junior in high school, and I'm older now. I'm 38 years old. So at the time, it was not easy to get statistics on players aside from like basic ESPN, like how many yards and receptions they had or sacks, like that type of information. And it was hard to get access to film. You had to hope they were like YouTube highlights or have like a film plug, which I didn't have in high school, to be able to access these players. So I was just kind of going off of what the media was saying and, taking a notepad and pen and just writing down my own list on how I thought these players should be stacked in a class. So as I got more into the draft and started getting access to advanced analytics and getting access to all 22 film and actually watching this, I started looking at how other people made their boards, and I would just, make an Excel sheet or Google Sheets or whatever and just start building my board. And I have a lot of people. I know that the draft community each year grows and grows. There's so many people now that do mock drafts, and I love to see it. Like, they're getting super into getting idea where these players are going to be and in their minds imagining where players fit for each team. And I love to see that. So what I was trying to do with this board is take all of the manual stuff that are either hard to get access to or take a lot of time, and removing that by automating as much of it as possible. So what I did was I built out a draft board, which is a big board, which is that first tab you're on. And if you want to click number 6, the way that this works is all you have to do is click the drop down and type a name or pick a player on the selection. It doesn't matter who you pick. Once you do that, yeah, Tyler Warren, great. Once you do that, it'll automatically import all that information. So once you're done, all you're doing is clicking a button and picking your players. You can go up to 50 players. You can add more if you want to by just copying and pasting that. But it's easy to share your board. So you're not showing people a picture of a notepad that you wrote and hoping your handwriting's legible or having to look up the information. Like, it's already on there for you. So the next thing is the positional tabs. Like if you go to running back, receiver, quarterback, whatever, doesn't matter which one. So I have a drop-down option next to each player's name. So all you have to do is click the drop-down and pick the round you think that player belongs in. So let's say, you have Hampton and Caleb Johnson as second-round picks, and you have Henderson as a second-round pick and Judkins wherever you think's fit. Perfect. So now when you go to the draft board tab, which we haven't shown you yet, it automatically loads those players in the round that you said that they were. So it makes it very easy to see all of your second-round graded players by position for each group. So again, I'm taking things that you would have to make your own positional board and your own big board and your own draft board, and now it's all automated into one easy-to-do thing. So if you go back to the running back tab, so you have Hampton, Caleb Johnson, and Henderson all in one spot. So we'll just go to Hampton and Johnson because they're the closest. So on the left side, where you see like number 3 and number 4 for Johnson, like where on the left side, right there. So if you just drag and drop, drag one and drop it, you have them both highlighted. It doesn't matter where you drop them. Cool. So on here, it updated. If you go back to the draft board, it automatically updates it there too. So it makes it really easy to do your positional stacks, and it's easy that you can share to your friends. So that's what the draft board is. It's totally free. If you go back to one of the positions, it has all the combine information, their school logo. If you scroll to the right, you'll see all of their PFF advanced analytics. The players in light blue mean they were a top 3 performer at their position. Players in light orange mean they were a bottom 3 performer at their position. So just gives you a visual reference. And again, this is the PFF premium that you would have to pay to have access to, and have all of that for each position on there for free too. And then the last tab, which I think is probably one of the cooler ones, is and where they lined up, like who played slot, who played wide, their slot rate, contested catches, all that. If you go to cornerback, I have all of their man coverage stats and all their zone coverage stats for each player too. So M is man coverage, and that's their coverage percentage. Like Travis Hunter played man coverage 51.2% of the time. How many receptions, targets, their catch rate, yards, touchdowns, pass breakups, quarterback rating, man coverage grade, all that. And then if you go to the right, you have all the exact same stuff, but for zone coverage. So there's a lot of like really good information in there that you may not have an easy time finding, and it's already on there for you. So all you have to do is drag and drop and click a button, and you can build a board. So that's the walkthrough of it.
Matt, this is ridiculously great.
Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it. It's one of those things that very easily just do a pen and paper. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how I got started. A lot of people still do it. Like Foots the King has a big YouTube audience, does a lot of draft content, and he still is a pen and paper guy. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want something that's easy to share and a little bit easier than referencing all the stuff back and forth, it's on my Twitter. It's free. Just go to the link and you're good to go.
Yeah. So Jeff, you said you need that. I can send you the link, Jeff, but go to Matt's Twitter. You can get the link. You can get access to it. And this is absolutely free for this year. So make sure you guys get it now. Use it. Appreciate it. Because this is, easily one of the best and most easy to navigate draft boards that you will find. And I'm pretty sure in the future, you guys will have to pay a subscription for this. So enjoy it for free while you can. Matt, how long did it take you to put this thing together? Because it's very detailed.
Like all in man hours, probably 7 or 8 hours, but I did it over like a 3-week span. So I just would, when I had like 30 minutes, I'd go knock out one position group and then move on to the next one. So I used, I exported the data from PFF. They have an option to do that. And then I used ChatGPT to use the list of players that I wanted and remove everyone else. So then it was like a manageable list instead of 3,000 players for each position. And then I sorted it to make it easy and added the coloring and school logos and stuff like that. So it took time manually to do it, but once it's done, it's easy for anyone else to manipulate and do what they want without taking a lot of time. Like if you were to go to any positional group that you want to, you don't have to do it right now.
Yeah.
Most of them have anywhere from like 1 to 40 players or something like that. You could very easily click a round that you think they're in and drag and drop and be done with an entire position group in like 5 minutes. So it makes it way faster than it would to manually do this on your own. And if you do it on your own, you need some sort of reference material to remember like how many players and how am I going to sort them. So it's just kind of adding some of the stuff that would make it harder to do this and making it easier. So that's the intent of it. If it helps people, great. If not, that's totally fine.
And this is completely free. So once again, guys, just go to Matt's page, find the link, play around with the spreadsheet. You're gonna get a lot more out of it because he's putting stats in there that you don't see most people talk about, but they're very important when analyzing certain players. Like you just talked about the corners, man zone, and things like that. You've been mentioning pass rush win rates for defensive ends quite a bit. Another important stat you don't hear people talk about. So even if you don't want to use it, I think even for information purposes, just go through and look at some of the analytical stuff on the back ends just so you can familiarize yourself with some of these players and some of those metrics that aren't readily available or widely talked about.
It's a nice little reference cheat sheet too. If you're watching the draft with some of your friends, maybe they're like a Steelers fan or something, and they draft a player, you can just quickly pull up that on your phone and be like, oh, did you know he had this and was this and ran this 40? Like you'll sound like an expert. But again, it's fun. It's a little labor of love. Took some time, but I wanted to make sure I had something out there that was easy for people to access. So trying to give back. And again, the internet, there's a lot out there. You can find all this information. It just may take a lot of putting stuff together. So I just wanted it to be in one spot.
All right. Last question before you go. We're hour 35 minutes. DJ Dog asked the question, where is the true meat of the draft?
This is the year you want to have a second and third round pick. That the rounds you mentioned is like the sweet spot. Actually, this would be a great year for a fourth round pick too. I think anywhere from 2 to 4 is like the money rounds in this draft class. On my big board, I have 15 first round grades. A lot of the people that I talk to have anywhere from 13 to 16 is kind of the general consensus. But when it gets to round 2 and round 3 grades, there's like 35 round 2s and 40 round 3 caliber players. Like it's loaded. Lots of really good players there, which is going to make it harder to trade back. I know a lot of people are saying trade back from 12 and take Emeka or Golden and whoever you like. I don't think there's going to be a ton of people wanting to trade up this year because they value those round 2 and 3 picks. I think a lot of teams are going to want to bail if they can. So you may not, unless you have a player that shouldn't be available at 12 that you probably don't want to trade away from, you're probably not going to have somebody wanting to trade up to your pick this year.
Well, Spoonie's put this question a couple times, so I got to put it up there. Which Georgia Bulldog do you think has the best chance to be a Cowboy?
None. We don't draft Georgia Bulldog players. I don't know what they did. Actually, this might be the first year that we have a shot because Coach Shoddy was actually the offensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs, so maybe he will pull some strings and make that happen. But realistically, from this draft class, I don't think there's a great chance we take a Georgia Bulldogs player. If there is, I think the answer is probably going to be Trevor Etienne round 5.
Yeah.
That's probably, if we're taking one, that's probably the player in the round it would be.
I asked Dom this question. I ask it to you. Which position do you think will have the most players taken in the top 100?
Great question. I think defensive tackle is probably going to be that position.
Okay.
DT is really, really, really strong. Like
it is.
I think I have. Actually, I can tell you. Let me look. So I have 20 defensive tackles that have a 4th round grade or higher. So it's really deep. Like there's at least 35 draftable defensive tackles in this class. It's really strong. So I think you're going to see more DTs than anything else go off the board.
Okay. All right. That's pretty much all we have. We're at an hour 38 minutes, so we went a little bit over. Before we go, Matt, let the people know where they can find you if you have anything coming up. I know you're probably getting a lot of calls to do other draft shows, and I'm sure you guys will probably be working on some draft stuff as well.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Professor O_NFL. It's the exact same thing that I have there it is. You can't see my finger, but you can see it on the bottom. That's my Twitter handle. I'm still technically a part of Pick 6 Sports. Spoonie, Dom, and Nix were all here in the chat. Unfortunately, with my family growing, I now have 4 kids, and 2 of them are athletes, and they're playing sports. So I'm busy coaching and being a dad at sports things like 6 days a week. So I don't have a ton of time, unfortunately, to do shows. So you're probably going to be the only draft show that I do this draft cycle. So excited to do that with you. But I will most likely during the NFL season jump on with Pick 6 Sports. They're good friends of mine. Love all of them.
Great guys.
So I highly recommend you check them out on YouTube. If you're not subbed to this channel, Marcus is fantastic. So definitely do that. But if you want to find another group of people that are like-minded and really good at it, I would recommend Pick 6 Sports. They're good folks. But you can find me on Twitter. That's my main spot right now.
Yeah. And Matt mentioned it earlier in the show. For the past 2 or 3 years, you've joined me for the Undrafted Free Agent show. So hopefully we can get you back again this year and keep the tradition going.
Yes, but we need Mendoza to join that because Mendoza's the guy. Because the undrafted free agents are the guys that are like 270 to 400 or whatever on boards, and Mendoza knows all of those guys, so he would be fantastic to join. But yeah, I would love to join again after the draft.
Okay, great. Luckily for us, Dallas likes to get a lot of big school guys and undrafted free agents, so it's usually not a lot of guys you've never heard of or tape that's hard to find.
So you mentioned it really quickly about the directional guys and how Mendoza always knows those. The Cowboys love directional Michigan players. So I don't know who that is in this class, but like we've drafted Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Western Michigan players. So if there's
Michigan too.
In Michigan, of course. If there's like a North or Central Michigan or South Michigan guy, I don't know if they even have schools for those. That's probably who we're going to take. And every year we seem to take in day 3 like a directional school guy. So that's probably something to keep an eye out for. It'll be interesting to see how the new coaching staff changes what we've done in the draft recently. So I'm excited. My last nugget I'll drop is I love the official 30 list this year. I didn't like the last two draft classes. Prior to the draft, I wasn't excited about the guys we had for our official visits, and I didn't like our classes 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I love this group of guys they have coming in. So if they draft anything close to what we have on the official 30s, I think it'll be a really good draft for the Cowboys.
Okay. Last question, I'll let you go. Gun to your head right now. Who's the pick at 12?
I think there's a lot of buzz that T-Mac's going to be there. I think Tedderone McMillan's going to be the pick at 12. I'm speaking it into existence. And I think the board's going to fall just right where it happens this year.
I agree. I think so too. All right, so that's pretty much all we have for tonight's show. You guys brought it in the comments as always, so appreciate you joining us. For the new people joining us tonight, we hope you come back and join us again. And for all the regular guests or the regular commenters, I will see you again next week, 8:30 Central Standard Time, for another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. As you guys know, I don't do a lot of mock drafts, so next week I will be doing my first and probably only mock draft live on the show. So join in, give me your thoughts. Let me know you think I should pick. Let me know what you think I'm right or wrong at. I'll see you guys again, 8:30 Central Standard Time, Facebook, YouTube, X, on the Fifth Quarter Podcast. May have a guest join next week, but definitely the Wednesday before the draft, we'll probably have Amanda back on the show. Jeff will probably join also, and I may bring in another guest. And we will be doing the 11 picks leading up to the Cowboys pick. So the people who are on the show are going to have an assigned team, and we're going to rotate. And then at pick 12, we're all going to make the pick at pick 12. So because of that, you don't know who's going to take what, and we're all going to be completely surprised with who's available once we get to 12. So got 2 good shows coming up. Hope you guys continue to join us. Thank you for tuning in. Professor O, once again, appreciate you joining. Thank you for taking the time out. Didn't hear the baby crying, so I think we're good. All right, that's it for tonight's show. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next week. And as always, let's go Cowboys. Thank you guys for watching.